Tick tock, Manitowoc. Your silence breeds complacency. Tick tock, Manitowoc.
Hello everybody, this is Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, but also as time passes I've been covering other cases such as the Staircase or OJ and many wrongful convictions of youth. I go over the documents, the photos, the videos, anything case related, so stay tuned because I have many more videos just like the one you're about to see. Hello everybody! We're here today talking about the Amicus briefs for Brendan, obviously. I'm revisiting them a bit because obviously when I did them originally, you know, MAM2 hadn't just come out, and there wasn't a lot of people paying attention, really, or just, you know, not as much as people are paying attention now. So I figured I'd go ahead and reintroduce these things because they're just full of, you know, what some of the most learned minds in, you know, law enforcement and the legal profession, you know, got together and filed for Brendan. And I'll go in a little more into that in a second, but for those of you who like the songs you hear at the beginning of my videos, the one you heard today, Tick Tock Manitowoc, is now available on iTunes. The link is below in the information below the video here. You can go to iTunes, and it is now available for you to listen on iTunes. So that's Tick Tock Manitowoc is now ready on iTunes. I'm just over the moon. I think Stacy Seabrook is awesome. He's just, I mean, I think he's a very talented musician. I think he's very smart when it comes to the case. He's done a lot of research, and that's evident when you actually listen to the lyrics of his songs. You know, it's just, and he has a real good heart. And he's just, you know, that's another thing about him that makes me root for him so much. And so I really hope he has tremendous success, and I hope all of you who are watching this will help share his tune on iTunes, share it around, you know, let's get him noticed. He's got 9-10 songs. He's going to be writing more, you know, and it's possible that right now at this time with you know, MAM2 just having come out, it's possible that he could get enough attention that you know, he could possibly get some success off of these songs that he's written that are quite clever, very heartfelt, and just a combination of a lot of things that are just, I think, amazing. So I will obviously continue to talk about Mr. Seabrook, and I will obviously be talking about him more tomorrow when I chat with Sean Atwood. I will be chatting with Sean Atwood on Thanksgiving, everybody, Thanksgiving special, and so that is, I think, a special treat. So I'm gonna talk about with him a few things. I'm gonna obviously ask him about his channel and the stuff that he's into. You know, obviously he does a lot of donating books for prisons and for kids and things like that. That's a big part of what he does. In fact, all the proceeds from his book Unmaking a Murderer, which we're also going to talk about, went to basically providing books for prisoners and for children in schools and stuff like that. And then some of it went to Stephen and Brendan. Obviously, some percentage of that money went to Stephen and Brendan. So Sean Atwood has done a tremendous amount of stuff for Stephen and Brendan to help keep this case in, you know, everybody's mind. And even if it wasn't in the spotlight, it was, you know, he was helping to create, you know, more chatter about it. And like I said, his book is brilliant, especially for those of you coming in that have a lot of questions about the 85 case, because Sean talks about the 85 case a lot. And the reason why is because there's so much stuff that you see in 85 that you see in 2005, and it's odd that you're seeing the same things, but everybody's acting like nothing to see here. So that's kind of one of the main themes I think Sean points out throughout Unmaking a Murderer. And so we're going to ask him about that and that sort of stuff. And so and then we're going to ask him obviously about his books, because he's written some books. He writes books about the cartel down in like South America and Central America and stuff like that, and Pablo Escobar and that sort of stuff. So I mean, he's just tremendous. He's a hardworking guy who's constantly working. He's working for the little guys, trying to help, you know, the guys like, you know, prisoners and kids and guys like Stephen and Brendan taking the time to help out when he can. We're going to be talking to Sean Atwood tomorrow on Thanksgiving, so I hope you guys are all excited about that. And then, you know, to get back to what I was saying about the Amicus briefs, and the reason why I'm going ahead and I'm uploading these now, and this one here is particularly from the Association of Psychologists and Psychiatrists. So basically, these are the people that would actually be looking at the mental capacity of a juvenile who has given a confession and whether or not that confession is voluntary. So this would be the brief from the people who would be best equipped to assess that with Brendan. So that's what we're going to be hearing from today. And I just wanted to reintroduce these briefs, like I said now, because there's people that are now paying a bit more attention, and the case is getting a little more attention again, more than it was getting back when Brendan was petitioning the Supreme Court of the United States. There's more attention now, and there may be people that don't know that actually 6 entities got together and filed amicus briefs for Brendan at the cert stage, is what they call it. When you petition the Supreme Court to have your case heard, it's called petitioning for a writ of certiorari, and so for short they call it the cert stage for certiorari. If you get past the cert stage, you get to what's called the merits stage, and usually it's at the merits stage when people will file amicus briefs, because they usually don't want to bother filing amicus briefs in cases that are only in cert stage. Okay, that's the interesting thing. So it's usually only at the merit stage that we see amicus briefs, but not with Brendan. With Brendan, we saw 6 very strong amicus briefs, but at the cert stage, because they were so interested in making sure and trying desperately to get the Supreme Court's attention and say, look, we need to address this problem the courts are ignoring, and they were, so 6 briefs were filed in favor of Brendan at the cert stage, which just doesn't usually happen. So that in and of itself tells you something about these amicus briefs. And so that is why I'm reintroducing them now as premieres, and hopefully a lot of people will get to see what these leading people in their fields and in their professions and in these areas that really pertain to the Brendan Dassey case, you know, what they have to say. And there's, like I said, there's several. So right here, this is one of many briefs filed with the Supreme Court in favor of Brendan Dassey. You know, some of these I'm just very eager to get to, but after my last video, there was a lot of people asking about the special circumstances and Brendan's limitations and why weren't those things addressed. So I went ahead and did this one first. This is from the Psychologists and Psychiatric Associations and what they have to say about youth and in particular Brendan with his low IQ, and how that makes him more susceptible to confess falsely and to give an involuntary confession. So here we go. We'll move into the first bit. This was basically going to tell us who they are, why they're interested, and why they are even writing the brief. So here we go. Judges and jurors harbor the stubborn belief that innocent people do not confess. People often find it difficult to fathom that an innocent person would falsely confess to a crime absent physical force. Indeed, a false confession can contain suggestions of veracity, including non-public details about the crime. But such details can become known to the individual before or during the interrogation through second-hand exposure to the facts about the crime and other techniques. The fact is that there are individuals who confess to crimes that they did not commit. Among the first 347 exonerations in the United States that were based on DNA evidence, false confessions contributed to 28% of those wrongful convictions. Among the 1,927 cases in the National Registry of Exonerations, 13% of those wrongfully convicted had falsely confessed. And the overwhelming majority of false confessions occur in murder cases. False confessions are highly likely to be involuntary, as this court has acknowledged. Indeed, the primary reason that innocent defendants confess is that they were coerced into doing so. Decades of psychological research demonstrate that certain techniques, known as maximization, example, exaggerating or fabricating the strength of the evidence against the accused, and minimization, downplaying the seriousness of an offense through reassurance and excuses, are psychologically coercive. These techniques, both of which were used in the interrogation of petitioner Brendan Dassey, increased the rate of confessions that turn out to be false. The risk of involuntary false confessions is the particular concern in cases involving juveniles. Studies, based on real-world and experimental data, demonstrate conclusively that juveniles, because they lack mature judgment and are especially vulnerable to pressure, are far more likely than adults to make false confessions. Research demonstrates that the same tendency in individuals with intellectual deficits, for similar but distinct reasons. In particular, individuals with low intelligence have high suggestibility, as well as difficulty comprehending legal rights and consequences, both of which can render them especially vulnerable to making false confessions under pressure of coercive questioning. Research confirms that in any discussion of dispositional risk factors for false confession, the two most commonly cited concerns are suspect's age and mental impairment. I mean, that's why the Supreme Court has made rulings before talking about those two things and talking about special care and what needs to happen with juveniles. I mean, it's so obvious it didn't happen here. And that the fact that it's having to go all the way to the Supreme Court, to me, is just amazing. Okay, so now we're going to move into their kind of exploration of the whole tactic, the maximization tactic. That's the tactic where they basically like overstate what evidence they have, or how anything that they feel like they have against the accused or the suspect. They overstate it. They basically act like they have more than they do. That's what maximization is. So they're going to talk about that right now, and how that can lead to false confessions. So here it is. The use of false evidence is a particularly potent form of maximization, directly linked to the risk of false confessions. In a seminal psychological study about false confessions, students participated in a computer typing exercise where each participant was instructed not to strike a particular keyboard key. Later, when the participant's computer shut down, as it was programmed to do automatically, basically, the participant was accused of having caused the crash by striking the forbidden key. The participant was then confronted with false evidence of his guilt. An actor working for the experimenter claimed to have seen the participant strike the prohibited key. The use of the false evidence nearly doubled the number of students who signed a written confession, from 48 to 94%. Other computer crash situations found high false confession rates caused by the introduction of false evidence, even where the confession was said to bear a financial consequence. They still falsely confessed, even knowing it would cost them money. Well, I say the fact that they still got high false confession rates on the computer crash exam, even when the people knew, well, or at least they were told that it was going to cost them money, they still falsely confessed. I mean, see, the other thing, I mean, that's the thing I was looking at here, is that, what was at stake? Okay, they just signed a piece of paper, whatever. But that one there, where they talk about doing the test, and where there was actually talk about there being a financial, charge that if you break the computer or whatever. So if that was the case, and people still falsely confess, knowing that they might have to pony up some cash, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's enough motivation for people to want to, dig in and fight something and deny, because they don't want to pay. And yet they still got a high rate of people that confess falsely to it. So that's fascinating, really. Very interesting. Results of research studies are consistent with these real-world findings. One study applying the computer crash paradigm found that false confession rates varied significantly based on age. When presented with false evidence, 78% of 12 and 13-year-olds and 72% of 15 and 16-year-olds confessed in writing that they had hit the Alt key and had caused the computer to crash, when they had not, in fact, done so. But that dropped to 59% for young adults aged 18 to 24. Nearly 2/3 of the 12 and 13-year-olds and nearly 1/2 of the 15 and 16-year-olds simply picked up the pen and signed without saying a word. That, I think, shows how pliable young people are. So, we know that just a juvenile on their own, right, is susceptible to the pressures of investigators and coercive questioning. We know that just being that age makes you susceptible, right? Then you throw in what we're going to go into now. This is where they start to go into now things like IQ, low IQ, suggestibility, mental limitations and things like that. And so we're going to move into that now, and you can see what they have to say in that respect. But in my mind, when you think about it, that when clearly just being that age makes you susceptible, it can only be worse when you have some kind of mental limitations and you have some learning disabilities and stuff like that. It makes you less confident, which is one thing you definitely need to be when you're being grilled by interrogators. You need to have some confidence, and so you stay in there and hold your ground and don't let them bend you to their will, right? So that there was so many factors that were working against Brendan to begin with when it comes to this interrogation. But so anyways, we're going to move into now the factors like low IQ and special circumstances and stuff like that. So here we go. The above cost-benefit decision-making principles apply to all interrogation subjects, regardless of age. But the impulsive tendency to accept heavy costs, example, prison time, in return for paltry rewards, example, ending the interview, is especially evident in juvenile populations. The authors of a seminal false confession study observed that one of the most common reasons for confessing, cited by teenage confessors, is the belief that by confessing they would be able to go home. Petitioner is a classic illustration of this phenomenon. After providing the interrogators with inculpatory statements, Petitioner asked about returning to his 6th period at school because he was concerned about a class assignment. Research in psychology shows that individuals with low intelligence, like Petitioner, are prone to falsely confess for 2 main reasons. First, due to the cognitive deficits of individuals with low intelligence, such individuals struggle and often fail to comprehend legal rights and consequences. For example, after watching a fictional interrogation video, 38% of participants with low IQs ranging from 60 to 75 thought the suspect would be allowed to go home to await trial, compared to 5% of those with average intelligence. Only 52% of low IQ participants thought that the suspect should obtain legal advice if innocent, compared to 90% in the average intelligence group. The connection between low intelligence and low comprehension of legal rights is well documented among juveniles. Numerous studies have demonstrated that both age and intelligence are associated with adolescents' understanding of the Miranda warning. One study that evaluated more than 900 juveniles across the United States found that juveniles of below average intelligence are more likely than juveniles of average intelligence to have diminished understandings of legal rights. Second, individuals with low intelligence are more likely to false confess because they tend to be more suggestible in the face of leading questions. There is a significantly negative relationship between interrogative suggestibility and intellectual functioning, such that subjects with IQs well below average tend to be markedly more suggestible. That tendency has been linked to false confessions. In a study of 3 groups, alleged false confessors, alleged true confessors, and resistors being ones who never confessed, alleged false confessors had the lowest IQs and the highest suggestibility scores. This wealth of psychological research demonstrates the higher risk of false confessions from persons with limited intellectual capability, and it is consistent with this court's repeated observation of the low intelligence of an accused when invalidating confession as involuntary. So, there we have it. We've now heard from the psychologists and psychiatrists that are, basically, they're, have an interest in what's going on in the criminal justice system because they work with it. So we get this amicus brief from them, and we have several others, or a few others, obviously, that some of you may know, that have come in, and I'll be getting to those. Obviously, I'm going to the prosecutors, current and former prosecutors next. That's the one I want to read next. So I'm sorry if somebody else out there was hoping that I'd move to another one next, but I really want to read that one now. So anyway, that's about it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see ya.